You tell yourself it's harmless, just a quick glance, just a moment of escape between responsibilities. But something ancient inside you hesitates, as if a part of your mind remembers a time before every silence had to be filled, before every idle second demanded stimulation. The hesitation is faint, almost imperceptible, and that is why it works. A narcotic does not announce itself. It seduces through familiarity. The first dose is always disguised as convenience, a notification that promises connection, a feed that promises knowledge, a platform that promises belonging. Yet each promise contains a quiet subtraction, the erosion of your ability to remain with your own thoughts. Jung warned that the modern individual flees from the inner world because he fears what he might find there. The digital narcotic offers the perfect hiding place, a refuge from the self. The scroll becomes a ritual. Not a choice, not a habit, but a reflex stitched into the nervous system. Your thumb moves before your mind decides. Your eyes scan before meaning is processed. Your attention is consumed before you even offer it. You begin to confuse stimulation with aliveness, distraction with relief, movement with progress. And slowly, subtly, the silence within you dies. The world around you blurs. You no longer feel time passing. You feel only the intervals between dopamine hits. Each swipe erodes a layer of inner stillness. Each surge of instant pleasure replaces a piece of your capacity to endure discomfort. Adults once carried weight. Now they carry withdrawal symptoms. The digital narcotic has rewired not only your impulses, but the very architecture of your emotional endurance. What used to be boredom, a space for imagination and reflection, becomes a threat. A void that must be filled before it exposes how fragile you have become. The narcotic numbs you gently, teaching you to escape from anything that demands depth, patience, or courage. It trains you to avoid reality in favor of the soft, glowing anesthesia of infinite stimulation. And by the time you realize what has been taken, the dependency is already complete. The narcotic no longer feels like an intrusion. It feels like part of your identity. Weakness is most effective when it feels like freedom. That is the genius of the digital narcotic. It convinces you that you are choosing what is, in truth, choosing you. Nothing about the modern internet is accidental. The colors, the timing, the frictionless motion, the confetti-like rewards, every detail was engineered to pull your mind downward into a state of permanent craving. What looks like a playground is, in reality, a laboratory, and you are not the user, you are the specimen. Dopamine was once a survival signal, a spark that pushed you toward effort, mastery, and long-term reward. But when stimulation becomes infinite, the signal mutates into noise. The brain, drowning in impulsive reward loops, begins to lose its capacity for direction. Depth collapses, intention dissolves, willpower erodes. Designers call it intermittent reinforcement. You know it by another name, the urge to check, even when there's nothing to see. Your phone doesn't need to buzz. The anticipation alone becomes the hook. The uncertainty is the trap. Sometimes the scroll gives you something exciting, sometimes it gives you nothing. This unpredictability is what wires addiction into the nervous system. Casinos perfected it, apps industrialized it. The architecture is elegant in its cruelty. A bottomless feed removes the natural stopping points that once protected your attention. A notification doesn't inform you, it interrupts you. Autoplay steals your consent in increments so small you don't notice the theft. Every platform trains your brain to expect constant stimulation and then punishes you with discomfort when it isn't there. The more you engage, the weaker you become at disengaging. The more you consume, the harder it becomes to tolerate the absence of consumption. This is how dependency works. You begin as the participant and end as the product. Nietzsche warned that a society that numbs the individual eventually produces a herd consciousness, people who believe they are thinking but are only reacting. The digital narcotic refines this into an art form. It shapes not only behavior, but identity. It conditions you to crave immediacy, reject difficulty, and surrender autonomy in exchange for stimulation so shallow it evaporates the moment it appears. The tragedy is not that the internet is addictive. The tragedy is that addiction has become the default condition of adulthood. Your mind was not built for fragments, yet fragments are all it receives now. A thought once had room to unfold. It could stretch, expand, wander, collide with memory, and return transformed. Depth was a natural state, not because humans were wiser, but because the world moved slowly enough for the mind to form coherent inner structures. That world is gone. The digital narcotic replaces continuity with shards. Your attention jumps, fractures, resets, jumps again. Nothing lingers long enough to become understanding. Nothing settles long enough to become memory. You exist in a perpetual mental vibration, a tremor of stimulation that prevents the formation of anything solid inside you. What you call distraction is actually something more severe, the collapse of sustained consciousness. Long-form thinking dies first. The brain, conditioned to expect novelty every few seconds, revolts against anything that requires endurance. Books feel heavier, conversations feel longer, stillness feels unbearable. What was once normal now feels like labor, and labor feels like a threat. This is not mere inconvenience, it is a psychological regression. A child cannot sustain attention because its inner world is still forming. An adult cannot sustain attention because his inner world has been dismantled. Nietzsche observed that modern people flee from silence because silence exposes them. He wrote that most individuals would rather obey noise than face the truth of their own minds. The internet turns this into a daily ritual. Every time silence approaches, you reach for a device that dissolves it instantly. Depth becomes foreign, even frightening. The consequences are subtle but devastating. Without depth, there is no reflection. Without reflection, there is no identity. Without identity, there is no agency. You begin to feel like a passenger in your own mind, a consciousness dragged from stimulus to stimulus, unable to choose direction. Thoughts no longer descend into your inner world. They skim its surface like stones thrown across a lake. Never sinking, never grounding, never transforming you, the digital narcotic doesn't merely shorten your attention span, it flattens your inner life. And once the inner life collapses, adulthood collapses with it. A fragmented mind doesn't break loudly. It shatters in silence, piece by piece, stimulus by stimulus. The digital narcotic teaches you to live in emotional immediacy. You feel something, you react. You want something, you seek it instantly. You dislike something, you escape. Every impulse becomes a command. Every discomfort becomes an emergency. Every interruption becomes a gravitational pull. This is the psychology of a child, restored inside an adult body. Impulsivity grows, patience shrinks, frustration escalates, emotional tolerance evaporates. You no longer endure. You flinch. You no longer confront. You retreat. You no longer choose. You escape into the nearest screen, hoping it will regulate the feelings you can no longer regulate yourself. The mind begins to live in fragments, because fragments are all it is trained to handle. A whole thought becomes too heavy. A whole emotion becomes too overwhelming. A whole moment becomes too exposed. The internet gives you relief in microdoses, but each dose removes a layer of resilience. The more you rely on instant stimulation to regulate yourself, the more incapable you become of shaping your own emotional climate. The inner adult weakens, the inner child takes command. Jung warned that anything we refuse to confront in ourselves returns in distorted form. The digital narcotic ensures you never confront anything long enough for transformation to occur. Your shadow is not integrated. It is avoided through endless stimulation. And what is avoided grows stronger. Identity fractures under this constant evasion, not dramatically, not visibly, but subtly, through the gradual erosion of coherence. You feel pulled in 1,000 directions, yet anchored nowhere. You sense emotions rising inside you, yet cannot name them. You react before you understand. You move before you choose. You speak before you think. The self becomes scattered, a collection of impulses rather than a unified conscious agent. This fragmentation is not accidental. A fragmented mind is easier to influence. A fragmented identity is easier to manipulate. A fragmented adult is easier to control. The digital narcotic doesn't need to imprison you. It only needs to keep you too scattered to notice the cage. Awareness doesn't arrive like a revelation. It appears as a discomfort you can no longer ignore. You notice it when your hand reaches for your phone before your mind forms a reason. You notice it when silence feels abrasive, as if the absence of stimulation exposes something fragile inside you. You notice it when a single moment of stillness feels threatening. Not because anything is wrong, but because you have forgotten how to exist without escape. The moment you notice is not awakening. It is confrontation. You begin to see that the dependency isn't around you. It is within you. The digital narcotic has rewired not just your habits, but the deeper architecture of your emotional life. Your impulses are no longer signals, they are instructions. Your cravings are no longer desires, they are directives. The narcotic doesn't wait for your consent. It acts in your name. This is the quiet horror. You believe you are choosing, but the choice was overwritten long ago. You feel a strange distance from yourself, as if observing a version of you that reacts automatically, moves automatically, seeks stimulation automatically. You sense how deeply your identity has been molded by the endless rush of micro-pleasures. What once felt like a tool now feels like a limb, something you can't imagine detaching without losing a part of yourself. You realize, without wanting to admit it, that the internet did not simply alter your behavior. It shaped your personality. It sculpted your emotional reflexes. It redesigned your inner world to fit the rhythm of the scroll. This realization creates a new tension, not the tension of addiction, but the tension of awareness. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you now understand. The narcotic still calls you, but the illusion has cracked. You feel the weight of your own dependency, and for the first time, it feels foreign. You begin to understand that the prison was never external. It was the part of you that chose numbness over depth, immediacy over meaning, stimulation over reality. This is the threshold, not liberation, but the first step toward reclaiming the mind that has been living without you. Strength begins the moment you stop identifying with your impulses. The digital narcotic thrives on one illusion, the belief that every feeling demands action, that every urge is meaningful, that every flicker of emotion is a command. As long as you obey this inner turbulence, you remain fragmented, a mind pulled by invisible strings. But when you step back, even for a second, something shifts. You witness the craving instead of becoming it. You feel the restlessness without collapsing into it. You observe the impulse without surrendering. This distance is not detachment, it is reclamation. Jung described individuation as the slow, difficult process of meeting yourself without distortion. To observe your mind is to separate the self from the conditioning that has hijacked it. You stop being the reflex, you stop being the craving, you stop being the noise, you become the one who sees. And for the first time in a long time, you notice how loud the noise has become. The constant tug for stimulation, the reflexive reach for the phone, the mental impatience that vibrates beneath every moment of stillness. These signals once dictated your life. Now they reveal the extent of the influence you've been living under. This is the beginning of redemption, not the comforting kind, but the intellectual kind. The kind that demands you stand face to face with the part of you that surrendered so easily. The kind that requires you to rebuild the very faculties the digital narcotic has eroded. Patience, depth, stillness, attention, self-direction. Reclaiming the inner observer is not escape, it is resistance. When you sit with an uncomfortable feeling instead of fleeing into stimulation, you interrupt the cycle. When you allow silence to expand without reaching for a distraction, you disrupt the conditioning. When you choose depth, a book, a thought, a moment of stillness, you rebuild the inner structures that adulthood requires. The narcotic still exists. The temptation still pulses. The architecture of addiction hasn't changed. What changes is your relationship to it. You see the design for what it is. You see your impulses for what they are. And slowly the self, the real self, begins to surface through the noise. Redemption does not arrive as clarity. It arrives as the quiet return of agency. The final illusion is the belief that you are still in control. You tell yourself you can stop whenever you want. You tell yourself you're just checking something. You tell yourself the device is a tool, neutral, harmless, obedient. But tools do not shape the hand that holds them. This one does. The digital narcotic has already carved pathways into your nervous system, taught your mind to crave immediacy, weakened your tolerance for depth, and replaced the quiet authority of adulthood with the restless dependency of a child. What you call normal life is simply the rhythm of your conditioning. Yet something else exists beneath the noise, a presence that has been watching, not the craving, not the impulse. Not the scattered identity shaped by stimulation, but the self that remains when everything artificial falls away. You feel it now, faint but undeniable. A silent awareness that doesn't demand, doesn't rush, doesn't fracture. It simply waits. It is the part of you that remembers what it felt like to think deeply, to choose deliberately, to exist without anesthesia. And here lies the last illusion. You believe the narcotic stole your freedom, but the truth is sharper. You traded it for comfort. Reclaiming the mind is not about deleting apps or fleeing technology. It is about remembering the weight your consciousness was meant to carry. Depth is uncomfortable. Silence is unsettling. Reflection is confrontational. But this discomfort is the birthplace of maturity. Nietzsche understood this, that freedom is not given, but forged in the willingness to face reality without flinching. You stand now at the threshold where the illusion breaks. Not cured, not cleansed, not perfected, but awake enough to choose. And if you choose awareness over anesthesia, depth over stimulation, truth over comfort, the narcotic loses its power. Not because it disappears, but because you finally see it for what it is. A cage that only works when you forget you're inside it. If this journey awakened something in you, subscribe to Alchemia of Mind and keep walking with us through the hidden layers of the mind.